Well, hello, everyone. We are live. Uh, we are here for the Impact Live Tribe conversation where we meet and greet and learn about leaders that are having a positive impact in the world. We're streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm your host, Ashley Bright, the Message Fixer, and today I am joined by the amazing Sam Eaton, an HR disruptor extraordinaire. Sam is the founder of MindAbility Consultancy, a keynote speaker, best-selling author, and co-host of HR Breakfast USA. Sam, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Ashley. It's lovely to be here.
Of course, I couldn't do this without you. I mean, you are just always bringing the energy and the positivity and the insights. I can't go wrong.
Yeah, sometimes too much energy, I find.
Is there such a thing? I feel like I'd rather have more than less.
I mean, I agree, but even for me, sometimes I was just saying before we came on air, I run a regular masterclass, and it just all came out wrong, and I left people thinking me I'm stalking alcoholic. For those watching, I'm really not. I actually do know my shizzle, but yeah, it was a funny moment in time.
Well, and I think in true Sam fashion, you're sharing that with us. Some people might try to keep that sort of in the green room, but I wouldn't expect any less from you. Full transparency, you get what you get, and that's what's awesome.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, we can make this as hard as we want to, right? And I think that's one of the things, I'm 5 businesses in, I've had a business that's failed. We've all had stuff that's gone on in our lives, right? Why make things harder than it needs to be and find a way to really enjoy it? And you and I've spoken about things before, like, find your joy. What's your joy? What do you enjoy doing? And it just, it energizes you, it ignites you, and it draws people towards you because they think, tell me more about that.
Absolutely. I was actually on a call yesterday and we were talking about this. And I was saying, because we were talking about how you show up for people and what their perception is of you. And I was saying that, I think I've always come forward as someone that's positive and outgoing. But the truth is that it's really only in the last few years, I think that like my true kind of ownership of that and everything aligned. It's sort of like I was thinking of that term, earned wisdom. That
Mm.
before I was kind of bringing it because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, and I feel like now I'm fully here and present and being myself, and I get that vibe from you. Like it's what, life is too short to screw around. Let's just be who we are and bring it.
Oh, and you know what? I've done it before. I've done what, I used to describe myself when I look back at it now is like this kind of chronic people pleaser.
Mm.
Oh, I must shop at this shop. God, I must do, should do, lots of shoulds and musts and everything else. And oh my God, what if they think badly of me? And actually, it's kind of like if you're living in, I talk about where's your joy, find your joy, live in your joy. And it's so much easier then because we live in a world now where not everyone's going to agree with you. In fact, a lot of people won't agree with you. Um, and that's okay. We can do so with good grace. And that's
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's amazing how much power we, in many cases, I know I was there. I'm still there occasionally, but we give power to people that, to be honest, don't really matter. Sometimes they're strangers, and we worry about perception. And there's a good friend of mine that I was chatting with the other day, and he was saying that in the last few years, he's just embraced this mindset of like, I don't care. He used an explicitive, but it was like he's like, I don't care. I'm here. I'm doing what I'm doing, and I love it, and I'm not going to apologize. And if people have a problem, that's okay.
And I also think there's something, I know there's lots of talk at the moment about, you're a middle-aged woman, you're invisible. I actually feel more visible now at 50 than I ever did at 40, 30, or 20. Kind of 20, I was, the stick insect female that was, y- you know, die hard into fashion, did the whole thing and everything else. And you just get to a point in life where it's like, look, I ain't here for long now, right? So I'm going to have a really good time. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to live the best life I can and do the best I can for the people around me. And if you have a problem with that, well, I wish you, love and goodwill and everything else, but don't come in my hemisphere. I don't need it.
Exactly. Move on. Well, I think maybe that's a perfect transition to learn more about what you're doing. I grabbed this from your profile. It says you help HR consultants, executive coaches, and benefit specialists generate consistent revenue from the right clients. So I'm intrigued. Tell me all about that.
Yeah, so we are now in year 4 with MindAbility. So we describe us as business coaches for the HR community. So you're right, we have HR consultants, executive career coaches. We've worked with lots of comps and bens, diversity and inclusion specialists. And I've had this fundamental belief. So we went into lockdown on the 23rd of March 2020 in the UK. My birthday, I remember it, right? And
What a
I
birthday
remember,
present.
yeah, exactly, meant happy birthday. I remember talking to my now husband. He was deployed at the time. So I'm married to an American. And I said to him, this is way bigger than we realize yet. I've just got this feeling. And I brought forward launching MindAbility. And it's there to support the HR community to help build businesses on their terms, not mine, not anyone else's, because I fundamentally believe that without this community, the much, much needed workplace evolution just isn't going to happen. And if we don't have the expertise, the brain power, the innovation of this massive community of individuals and now businesses, we can't make this change happen. And I'm excited to work with them because they've got some fabulous ideas, which allows me to kind of commute between the UK and US to see friends, to see family, to do great talks at things like Disrupt HRs, and really make that difference to, to what the name of your show is, the Impact Tribe. I mean, we met at a Disrupt HR. And the conversations are just so enriching, and seeing where they get to and the work they're doing is inspiring, and it inspires me every day.
That's wonderful. I mean, I was a convert because I hadn't heard of Disrupt HR, and I learned about it probably in mid March. And then by April, I was on stage sharing the stage with you at that event. And since then, I've just been exposed to this world of amazing human beings that are, I mean, it's cliched maybe to say it, but it's like you're putting the human back in human resources. I think that is, it's amazing to me that has been lost. I think we've all had experience with HR that are
Mm,
less than great. I think that's probably a universal reality, unfortunately.
yeah.
And it's been wonderful to meet people that are taking a new approach and sort of sounding the siren or the horn of like, we got to do something different. And this is the time to do it, man. Everything is getting disrupted.
Hmm.
And so I'm glad that you're out there doing your thing, shaking the tree as it were, and doing things. So I'm curious. I know that like we've chatted a little bit about your program, and I was curious about you have something called the MindAbility Business Club. What is that?
Yeah. So I'd say over the last definitely 2 years, the community and the group programs have all come from people saying, Sam, this is what we want. And the club came about from people saying to us, look, we don't want to be spending thousands on a mastermind. We're lonely. We
Mm.
just want to run things by people. So we built the club. I'm a massive believer in surrounding myself with people who are better than me. So we've got a faculty of experts there. But our 3 pillars are obviously coaching, collaboration, and community, which allows us to meet 3 times a week. So we have accountability calls on a Monday. We have a number of them throughout time zones throughout the States and the UK, and also soon to be New Zealand and Australia. We then have key topics on a Wednesday, and we record those sessions. So this time was all about who do you work with, where do they hang out, and really thinking differently about how we network. Next week's all around pricing strategies and those kind of things. And then Friday, we have a snag to brag. So you come with a problem, snag, you leave with it's solved, brag.
Nice.
And we have all sorts of community chats that go on in between. So we've constantly got them. And we've got a couple of tiers. So we've got like a support tier. The other thing I wanted it to be was cost effective. So we charge $115 a month for it. You come and go whenever you please. And I'm very proud of myself that, we've got it on Patreon. So it's a very different platform to what most people are used to. Really easy to find your way around. And yeah, it's great. It's really growing. People are really enjoying it. And then they're making money. Normally people come, if they're early stage, they tend to get the first client within 4 to 6 weeks. And I think, we've got one. She had 0 clients straight out of corporate America, and she's now on 11 clients in 3 months.
Wow, that's wonderful. And it's sort of a trend that I'm seeing more and more people that I'm meeting. I do connection calls. I do probably 6 to 8 a week, and at least half of those are people that have left corporate for
Mm.
one reason or another, and they've wanted to strike out on their own. Many of which, it's a combination of frustration and burnout, plus wanting to really do something that has more value and has more impact. I mean, that was kind of my journey 10 years ago, was just like, I'm done. It just wasn't serving me, and I don't think I was really serving others. And it's great. I mean, I think, it's ironic. Your birthday, here's a pandemic, happy birthday. But it sounds like you've turned that into opportunity, as many have, with using online tools and sort of online communities and having a reach that you couldn't have kind of just being in physical proximity. And that to me is a wonderful outcome of what was a very challenging time, I know, for everyone.
Yeah. It really was, and I think we all learned so much about ourselves, and that's the thing. I'm a really sociable person. I mean, who knew? I love a good networking event. I love going around and talking to people, and I was completely and utterly by myself.
Mm.
No one. And the beauty of that was, actually, I evolved to be someone who's okay with that. I walk 5 miles a day. I exercise an insane amount of times throughout the day. I was the fittest, healthiest, and most focused I've ever been in my life. And I think you're right. If someone had said to me at 50 years old, you'd be really learning social media, you'd have your own show, you'd have a Patreon site, you'd be flying all around the world, you'd have more energy now than you ever did. I said, don't be so ridiculous. That's an insane thing to say. Why would I want to do something like that? But the community that comes out of it, it's almost like a silk web. I feel that, you start with something like a LinkedIn and you build that up. You learn to get good at that. Then you find these wonderful things like Disrupt HR, where, you meet great people like you and I met, you become friends, and you start to see this huge community that just vibes together and is doing some awesome stuff. And it's incredible. It's so much good has come from it.
100%. And I mean, I feel that, I'm 51, I'll be 52 next year. And something about, I mean, all the cliches, at least for me, kind of came true for a little while. I kind of freaked out. And I think that that's sort of that societal
Yeah.
expectation and that lens focused on you. And I think it's similar with corporate, this idea that you kind of like, well, you got to follow the rules and fit into this box. And something about hitting that midlife is you're just free. It's kind of like let's go. And
Yeah.
I'm glad I've seen benefit, and I'm glad that you're embracing it. And it's wonderful. So I want to step back a little bit. I noticed on one of your posts just a couple days ago, you had the opening line: "When I first left corporate, I was over the moon. I was free." So I'm curious, kind of, for two things. One, what was going on before that moment that kind of led to it? And then you kind of touched on that inception of your company. So I'm curious, sort of, what was your journey like prior to that liberating free moment, all exclamation points at the end there?
Yeah. It I came, very early on. I was exceptionally corporate. So, my kind of academia came later on in life. I struggled with academia, if I was honest. I was always petrified of the exams, right? It terrified me. So I did a bilingual secretarial course. So everything I did in English, I did in French. And, young Sam was an arrogant, cocky little person. you know, kind of took myself off to Paris thinking I could conquer the world, having been told I wasn't diplomatic by the diplomatic corps. How rude. Um, and came back tail between the legs, you know, couldn't make ends meet, couldn't get a job. So I started off in a typing pool at KPMG, massively corporate, you know, really large tax firm and accountancy firm. And then from there, I got bored within a year to 18 months. And I was sent to this interview at Goldman Sachs. And there was this really twitchy guy, and he was all like this with his tie. And I was thinking, what is wrong with you? And we were talking for an hour and a half, and I came out and I got back to the recruiters, and they said, we were really worried about you. And I said, God, you know, he's a bag of nerves. Anyway, little did I know that he was one of the top 7 men in Wall Street. And he was the head of IBD at Goldman Sachs. So he was incredibly senior, but boy, did I know it from day one. So, you know, I was working 19 hours a day, 7 days a week. I had a pager that would go off for him. And, you know, he was British Airways individual top passenger. So at the age of 21, I was holding 747s in Hong Kong for an American citizen on British soil. And you can imagine the arguments I had with certain officers. So
I'll bet.
I always had to have really thick skin. But as with all of these things, you know, something went wrong one day. He fired me. We had a massive row. But because I'd just done the BSB Sky merger, I ended up at Sky TV working for the CEO there. And that's where I learned so much. And again, you know, you didn't have a life during those kind of things. It was, you know, it was the time where the really big deals, so, you know, pay TV came in, the boxing came in, set-top boxes came in. You know, it was a real time. And I worked for Sam Chisholm, who was the then CEO, who really made a difference. And he, you know, he put TV on the map. He really changed what it was all doing. And I remember 20 years later, after we'd all worked together and he died, the whole team got together still to celebrate him. So he, as much as he created a lot at the time and we didn't see it, he created something really special. And I had a real soft spot, still do, for him. I love him to bits. And then from there, I kind of, because I'd spent so long keeping the press away from, you know, some of these really big names, and I was still so young, I then went into PR and I helped launch interactive television into the UK. So I worked for British Interactive Broadcasting. I took a massive sofa around the country for 3 months and, you know, told the world that they actually needed interactive television and wasn't this a wonderful thing. So, you know, I had a real varied start. And then my last big corporate role was for a very, very large PR firm. And this is where it gets interesting. And again, I was still in the kind of that technological space around, you know, mobile phones and TV and everything else, because I knew it so well. And I had a director at the time who was very, very good at just being an idiot because she just didn't know how these things work, right? So she single-handedly managed to kind of almost half the size of my portfolio.
Oh, wow.
So I knew there was a come to Jesus moment. So sure enough, the CEO, who's a, you know, tough New Yorker, sat down with this other woman, and I kind of looked at her, the CEO, and she looked at me and she went, "Well," I said, "Yep." So I said, "Before you begin," and I turned to this other director, and I'd had a script given to me by the lawyers who were sitting in the cafe just opposite, and I read off the script as to what was going to happen and what I wanted to leave with.
Yeah.
And I remember the CEO kind of looking at me going, "Fair play." So she said, "What do you want?" So I said, "You know, these clients, this is X, Y, and Z, and what I want to leave with." So the only thing they wouldn't give me was a reference. But that was very much the start of my entrepreneurial journey because, you know, I'd seen what was happening. I was 27 at the time. And I thought it's now or never, right? I've just got to take a really big kahuna decision here and just go in all guns blazing and go, this isn't going to happen. So the rest of the team were told that I resigned and, you know, my first company was born. And several months later, this other director who, you know, I'd cited and said I'd personally go after and sue her was spectacularly fired on the floor, apparently. But, you know, that's that was never part of my story, but I think it's interesting, how life kind of evolves. So yeah, very, very corporate start in life.
Wow, I was going to say it doesn't get much more corporate than like Goldman Sachs and and literally being kind of right-hand person to whoever's in charge or within that orbit. So I'm sure you have a lot of like secrets that you could hold over people if you wanted in terms of that closeness and that relationship.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think you really appreciate at the time what we were part of. There were many books written at the time, and I'm in them
Hmm.
because we were part of that team. Yes, I was just the EA really, um, but I learned so much through that, and you were exposed to so much commercially.
I'll bet.
Um, yeah, so fascinating times.
Definitely. So let me ask you. So, I mean, clearly, because we were both up on stage, I watched you perform. You're a great communicator and a powerful presence up there. Is that something that kind of came naturally to you? Is that something you worked on throughout your career, or was it just a byproduct of being in some of those roles where you had to be diplomatic and compromise and all those good things?
I actually think I spent several years being a bit lost actually, where that kind of thing would have terrified me.
Hmm.
And really lost my way in terms of paying far too much heed. I think we talked about it earlier to others. And you know, I know I've got a bit of an edge and I'm comfortable with that as long as I'm never rude or, talk out of turn. And it's taken me some time to get that back. I think I'd lost it for about 15 years. And it's only in the last few that I've got that back where I'm really comfortable going up on the stage, which is ironic because I'm also a trained news presenter. So,
Hmm.
that hasn't phased me. Is now I think, it's about the message. It's not about me. It's about getting people to think. It's about there's a better way to do things. And I want you to leave with something that you think about rather than, oh, they're looking at me. They're not. They're here to listen to the message.
Absolutely. I mean, you know me, I'm a communicator. That's what I teach. That's what I love. And the moment you can switch that mindset and realize that like I'm here to serve them, I'm here to empower and add value to them, it really does take a lot of that weight off. At least
Mm.
I find that. I try to impart that to many of my clients. So super, super powerful. So let's change gears a little bit here. We talked corporate, we talked about kind of this, you're reading off legal documents and there's these sorts of things. So shifting gears entirely, what sort of things in your life bring you joy?
It's the simple things. It's the daft little things. Like I love breakfast with my husband in the morning.
Mm,
It's such a special time. I just love that. And being able to cook a meal together. And, I do lots of walking, try and read lots and exercise. I'm determined to be that one that grows old
mm.
incredibly disgracefully. And, I want to be that energetic person for as long as possible. And I suppose I'm more conscious of that. So the joy very much comes from really nurturing things and time with close girlfriends and really close friends. That means so much to me because for some reason people seem to have less time these days.
Yeah, everybody's busy. Everybody's canceling and changing plans, and it's interesting. I've appreciated is I feel like as we've gotten more and more technical in terms of social media and Zoom and all of these things, there's benefits to that, but it's also I think created more desire for that in person connection or those tight relationships with friends or family or close associates. And it always gives me hope because I think even when we talk about like communication and being on social media, that authenticity, the storytelling, the transparency, it's human. AI can't do that, the platforms can't do that, and so it kind of gives me a hope, if you will, for things.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. And again, sometimes I'm naturally a fighter. I've had to learn to kind of turn that into positive energy.
Mm.
Um, and I can let myself down quite badly. And I remember, shortly after the pandemic and people started coming back to the office, and it was, things like you should and must. And I was
Mm,
entrenched in this, but, I've got a remote business. We are 100% digital, and that's how we're going to stay. And it was only when I started to go out and travel a lot, and I was then, backwards and forwards between the UK and the States on a very frequent basis, that I remembered the power of seeing people. I mean, you and I've seen each other in person. We've, had a good time. We did Disrupt HR. We hugged each other goodbye. We had the session the next day. Those are all important things from that human connection, which, yes, you can get great connection through the internet and digitally, but we all know it's not the same.
exactly. Yeah. And I think too that I've found myself being much more selective about those moments when I do go out and meet with people. Cause I think, as you said, everyone's busy. And I think that if I got anything out of the pandemic, it was really sort of the preciousness of my time and
Yeah.
wanting to spend it with people that I care about. And I think before that, I was a social butterfly, but I would argue that at least 50% of it was, it wasn't really something that I enjoyed or wanted to do. And so I think it's important to have that level of focus and awareness.
Yeah. I completely agree, Ashley. Completely agree.
So speaking of those relationships and those people that are meaningful, I'm curious. You've had quite a journey. Are there a few people that you think of that were particularly influential in your life, and how did they impact you or kind of guide you?
I think my grandmother, my mum's mum, was someone who'd sacrificed so much, but you would never know, the opulence that she had. She grew up frontiers, then India, and then came back to the UK to with my mum. And then unfortunately, my grandfather got very ill, who I never met,
Mm,
and that forced them into absolute penury. And I don't really think my mum ever kind of got over that, but Granny just, she just kept going. She was an incredible woman, so she was a huge influence for me.
hmm
Um, Sam at Sky, he had a bite, he'd bark, but when you needed him, he was always there. He was a very, very special person in my life. Um, and yeah, my husband now, I think he's one of the most dignified men I've ever met. Um, I'm very lucky to be married to him. So yeah, and I think we've all got those people along the way that we meet and mean so
hmm
much to us.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think as we get older, I think those relationships become more and more key. And even if they're from the past, it's like I think it's I talked about earned wisdom, and it's something that I have a much greater appreciation for things that were shared with me by my grandfather and others in my background that they're gone now, but like now it's resonating with me. When I was 15, 16, it didn't. So
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
it is. It's crazy. So I don't ask this question of all guests, but I feel like you are someone that you're fiery, and you've probably had a moment that would resonate with this. But I'm curious if you've received an insult that you're actually proud of.
um, God, insult I'm proud of. I mean, I'd probably say there was one time, and by the way, this person then went on to hire me and ask me to help grow the business. I was having an argument with a bouncer who wouldn't let me into an after party at a big conference. And I managed to negotiate myself on the way in. And I remember this guy coming up behind me and went, firstly, you could talk the backside off. Anyway, the expletive,
Yeah, yeah.
followed by, I need to talk to you tomorrow because I need you in my business. And I
There
think
you
that
go.
was probably the insult was there. It kind of, smacked me right between the eyes. But then, came the, oh, hey, can you come work with me? And I thought that was hilarious, actually. So yeah, I'd say that's mine.
And I could definitely see that, a little smack, you kind of bring that out in people, but it's kind of like the immediate hard conversation. And then we're moving on. We're on to the
Yeah.
next thing. So that's great. So we're almost out of time here, but I want to ask a couple more things here. First of all, if there's one thing that you could be remembered for, what would it be?
Joy. And I think if it had to be a word, helping people to find their joy.
Mm,
Um, I've been so restricted and judged and held back and have still been judged pretty harshly, which is for another time, and lost a lot as a result of that.
mhm.
But if people can find their joy and get beyond that, then it's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. I'm all about joy. I think we need that every day and we need more of it. And so I appreciate that you are bringing it. And then very last, is there anything that you've got coming up that people should know about, or ways that people can support you on your journey?
Oh, thank you, Ashley. Well, we're coming out. So Toby Kang and I are coming out to Disrupt HR Minneapolis on the 1st of October. So if you're in the Minneapolis area, love to see you and say hi. And then we are coming to Disrupt HR Phoenix, which we are so
Woo!
excited about.
Get to see you guys in person.
Yes, so we're doing that on October 3rd, and then October 4th, we are running a business club in Phoenix. So
Wow,
if you're
busy couple days there.
yeah, so super excited.
That is awesome. All right, well, I want to just take this moment to thank you so much for being here and bringing your joy and your energy and your insights. It's so necessary, I think, for in this community, just to see that joy and that energy. So thank you for that, Sam, and thank you to everyone who has tuned in. If you missed this, the replay will be available on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And in 2 weeks, Thursday, September 12th, I'm excited to be welcoming my special guest, Anthony Towndrow, who is the founder of Positivity, let me make sure I get that right, Adventure and Wellness Coaching. And so with that, I will say thank you again, Sam. It was wonderful. And thanks to everyone for joining us.
See you, everyone. Thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome. Thanks again.